You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Welcome into the Toronto Sports Rush right here on the Bet Rivers Network. EJ Hradek here today. And remember, like, subscribe. We got a lot of great content for you on a daily basis. So remember to check it out. Like and subscribe and keep abreast of what we've got coming at you. Today we've got a Stanley Cup winning general manager, the former general manager of the New York Rangers, Neil Smith, to join us to talk a little bit about what's next for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Neil, thanks for taking the time today. You've been in these seats for the Toronto Maple Leafs, really a disastrous season. Everything that could go wrong pretty much did go wrong. If Keith Pelly came to you and said, Neil, you're our guy, how would you go about this process? Is it rebuild? Is it retool? What is it?
I don't think it's any way that it's a rebuild, but it's certainly a lot of changes have to be made. You know, you scratch your head and you say, okay, they lost Mitch Marner, who's really a great player, and that was a colossal screw up by the Maple Leafs. I don't care who was in charge, who wasn't in charge. You have to get a lot more than Nicholas Waugh for Mitch Marner to leave and do what he's doing now in Vegas. But that's only one player. It seemed like the rest unraveled on them. Their goaltending problems that they had, the defense problems that they had. I mean, you can go all the way through the lineup, and every position they seem to have problems. And I got to say, EJ, and I don't like to single out people because I don't think it's fair unless you're talking to them and you're listening and asking questions. But I think Craig Berube had to have lost this team. I mean, I watched them last night in Ottawa, and it was just pitiful. And that's game 82, and I know they're already out, but it seemed to me that he lost them a long time ago. And again, I'm a former GM. I've been in these situations, so I don't like to talk through the TV and say, is Craig Berube lost the players? I don't know. But they're certainly not performing under his leadership.
Yeah, it's been, as I mentioned, I'd have a hard time coming up with bright spots in the season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, you know, Keith Pelly had his pressure. They decided they were moving on from Brad Treliving as the manager. The search is on. We don't know if they're going to hire one. They're going to hire two. We've talked about data-driven. We've talked about AI. It was kind of a freewheeling press conference he had a couple of weeks ago. But, I get the sense this is a two-man job, that somebody comes in maybe at the top and then they hire a manager and it goes from there. Well, how do you feel about it? You were in that seat. Obviously, things have changed over the years. The jobs are a little bit different now. But what do you make of what they should do in terms of the search for a new manager?
Well, first of all, Keith Pelly should stay as far away from it as he possibly can, because when he went in there last year and right away started calling Berube chief, it's not something you're supposed to do. You know this, EJ, in hockey. You're not supposed to do that unless you're within the locker room, you're close with guys. Yeah. He right away wanted to snuggle up with the GM and the coach, and he had opinions on things. Like, you knew right then you're in for some problems. His press conference was a disaster because instead of just saying, we're going and getting the best possible person available to run the best franchise in the National Hockey League, he went into, data-centric and all that other just silliness. And, and then it's given all the media this chance to say, well, what about the analytics guy in Florida that's never been a GM, never been a scout, never been a hockey guy, never been anything, but he knows how to read a computer? I mean, I just think they've let this thing run into a mess. And I think it also started, EJ, with letting Brendan Shanahan go. I mean, Brendan at least Brendan's a hockey guy that did a good job on the business side. And yes, he hired Brad Treliving, but he was there to oversee it. He does know hockey players. But then they let Shanahan go, and Treliving is there by himself. And now the warts that maybe even Shanahan knew that Brad had, whatever they are, they came out into full focus of the guys from MLSE. And, then his days are numbered. So it's just a colossal mismanagement. I don't even know where to start.
Neil, you mentioned about, Keith Pelly and that press conference. And why do you think it's so hard for these guys just to come in and say exactly what you said? Like, he didn't have to say a lot. He could have just come in and said, listen, like, just as you said it. I don't think I can even say it any better. Just like, we're going to go out, we're going to do a search and try to find the best qualified guy to run the best franchise in the world, in the Toronto Maple, however you want to phrase that, and then just get off the stage.
Yeah.
Why is it that these guys can't do that?
Because their egos won't let them do that. They have to be the smartest guy in the room. And, the problem is when you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in real trouble because you're not. I don't care what room you're in even. You're not. And you're in a hockey room. You're in front of hockey media, hockey intensity, and you're coming from TV with no background whatsoever in how things happen in hockey. They're going to see right through you. They're going to eat you up. And I think that's just what they did. But I got to tell you that I think from the outside looking in, EJ, again, from the outside looking in, his ego must be that which he cannot help himself.
Yeah. Yeah, it just seems like, it was Keith Pelly in this instance. And, Neil, you and I, we've been around a while. You've worked for a lot of these guys. I've watched it unfold. It is amazing. It's like he was like, it's a different name, it's a different face, but I've seen this movie before from executives, from team presidents that come out and play this game. I just don't understand why it makes any sense, but I think you said it best. It's an ego thing.
Well, and what's the difference between Keith Pelly and Richard Petty? I mean, honestly,
exactly.
The one guy's just like the other guy, just change places. Neither of them know anything about hockey, and yet they're put in charge, and their ego decides that, well, I'll do it my way. Well, your way ain't going to work. You're not from this world. Richard Petty is the guy who decided to bring in John Ferguson Jr., if you remember, and that didn't work out well for them. He made a lot of decisions that were tough. I mean, Pat Quinn was the GM coach, and he took the GM title away and said basically, well, it's too much for one person, so we're going to find another GM, but we're going to keep you as coach. Like, how does that work? So, now we've
not well,
right? And now we see this edition of this show, and I'm from Toronto, as you know, and so I've seen it all the way from Harold Ballard to now, and I was even alive and looking around when they won their Stanley Cup in '67. That was under the Smythe family more than anything. And they were pretty stable because they were hockey people. But then once it went into the Leafs became a corporate entity and Harold Ballard, of course, he also was a narcissist, big ego guy. Yeah. And that
different world with Harold Ballard.
Oh my goodness!
Neil, when we are invoking the name of Harold Ballard to in this conversation about the present day Leafs, it really does tell you how bad the year was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's you're talking about probably the biggest failed era of the Leafs history by naming it Harold Ballard, and we're comparing that to now. Like, my goodness, that's how far they've fallen.
In 1 year.
Yeah.
In 1 year. Let me get to Matthews, because that's like that, that he spoke on Thursday morning and didn't say really anything earth-shattering. I mean, he talked about, how much it's important for him is to be the captain of the team. It's not lost on him. He said pretty much what you would expect him to say in this circumstances. He's hoping it's kind of a one-off. He cited some teams that, like the Bruins, who had a bad year and then were able to bounce back this year and be back in the playoffs. He's got a couple of years left on his contract. I think what Matthews is thinking internally, and whoever the next general manager is, they're going to have to figure that out, because that really dictates what you do moving forward. Because if you can't be, as you started this with the whole thing with Mitch Marner, you cannot be in that situation again where he can walk out the door for nothing. So, the idea of a superstar player trading him is tricky. Again, you've dealt with that in your career, as in different spots. But that's the biggest thing for the next manager, I think, coming in, is to figure out and talk to Auston Matthews and get a sense of where his commitment is. And if he doesn't want to be firmly in, You got to shop him and move on and get a lot of things for him if you can.
Yeah, and I think he have 1 year or 2 years to go?
He's got the 2 years left.
Okay, so naturally when he stands up,
you have a little time.
Well, yes, you do. And also from Matthew's standpoint, it's April of 2026. My contract doesn't run out until July 1st of 2028. I got 48 more months here. Like I got to say all the right things. I got to live in this town and try to operate in this town for 48 more months. I can't be saying something that everybody's going to get mad at me about or that's going to show my hand. But, yes, the GM has got to go to him and go to his agent and say, where are we on this? We want to get something done. We want to do an extension. Hear what they have to say. Are they going to say what the Connor McDavid camp said, which is, well, we want to see a commitment to winning before we're ready to sign? And then if it was me, I would just say, well, I can only.
And by the way, Neil, I'll interject here. Same agent, Judd Moldover is same agent, so it might be the same approach. Who knows?
Right? Yeah, and all the new manager is going to be able to say is, look, I can only do what I can do. My goal is to win the Stanley Cup in Toronto, but I can't do it overnight. Obviously, nobody can, and I just think he won't end up going back to Toronto. Now, does that mean they can trade him? Does he have a full? I'm sure he's got a full no move, no nothing clause.
He's got protections. Yeah. He's got protections.
Yeah, so he's going to be able to dictate what happens with this situation. But if you think he's not coming back, you've got to move him within the next year and a half. You have to, because that's just such an unhealthy thing for an organization to lose a player. Any high-end player, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, by the way the Islanders lost him, you just can't let that happen.
Yeah, I mean, again, to lean on your experience as a manager, I mean, that is a disastrous circumstance, right? When you lose an asset of that value, and the Leafs were able to get pennies on the dollar at the end. At least they got something, but clearly they were in a position where they had no real cards to play, and the fact that Vegas and Marner in Vegas, they wanted to connect, and you could make a little bit longer deal, gave the Leafs something to make a small deal with there. But boy, that's a wrecker for your franchise when you lose those elite guys for nothing.
Absolutely, and I don't know if they were sitting around thinking, well, Mitch won't leave because it's his hometown. We can get Mitch signed. But there was a window there before his last season in Toronto where they could have, put some pressure on about a new deal. As soon as that went by and we were starting into last season, 24-25, now Marner had all the cards because he had a no move.
Yeah.
So you couldn't do there's nothing you could do. He wasn't going to re-sign, and he didn't want to move. And they asked him, will you go to Carolina for Rantanen? And he said, no, I don't want to go. So he held all the cards. And that's something that management can't allow to happen. That's what your job is to make sure you look after your organization the best you can. And you can't let these things slip through your fingers.
How about a case like William Nylander? Now, he's got years on a contract, but, he's obviously an asset that you could perhaps trade and get some significant assets back. How do you feel about Nylander and his future?
Well, I think that Nylander had a tough year with Berube. I think it was obvious from everything I've read and watched that Berube didn't like the way that Nylander played. He wanted him to go more straight line. I think Nylander's a terrific talent, and I think that they've lost Marner. They've got to keep what they got. You can't let Nylander. If you start talking about letting Matthews and Nylander go, you're talking about a total rebuild. If you talk about keeping them and adding to them, it's different. The other guy, and I know you haven't brought him up yet, but it's John Tavares. But at 35 years old, the only guy that played all 82 games. Terrific ambassador, I think, for the Toronto Maple Leafs and for hockey. His work ethic and the way he carries himself. But he can maybe come back for another year, I guess, but you can't depend on him for anything. He's getting up there. So I think they've got to find the right coach. I hate to say this because I like Craig Berube, but I can't possibly see how he'll be back next year.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Berube because they, to this point, to the moment we're having this conversation, Neil, they haven't made an announcement on his future. I would think it would be wise to make a decision there before you have a new manager. I think it's, and you could tell me this. I think it's unfair to hire a new manager and make him make that decision. I think you've got to make that as an organization first, because I think it puts a lot on a new manager to come in. The first thing he's got to do is fire the coach.
Well, yeah, and like I talked to Ken Holland, when he went to L.A. just a year ago, right? He's had 1 year under his belt with L.A. He got there, and Rob Blake had already, made Jim Hiller the head coach after Todd McClellan was fired. Jim Hiller was interim, and then they went through that playoff round of 2025, and some problems during the playoffs against Edmonton. And then Kenny comes in, though. He's just hired as the new GM, and they're asking him, what about Jim Hiller's future? Well, what's he really going to do? All he can do is say to Luc Robitaille above him, what do we do about Jim Hiller? And if Luc Robitaille says, well, we think he's a pretty good coach, as the manager, you've sort of got to live with him. You can't just fire people because you want to spend money. Yeah. So if I think you're right. I think it's unfair if they keep Craig Berube around and say, well, you evaluate him. Well, how am I going to evaluate him? I got no games to evaluate the guy.
I know.
So that's just one more dysfunction.
Yeah. And, Neil, too, with, in the case of Craig, and you pointed out, I mean, Craig won a Stanley Cup with St. Louis. If Toronto moves on from it, doesn't mean he's a bad coach. It just means it didn't work out. I mean, we've seen that with Bruce Cassidy now on a couple of occasions where Bruce was in Boston. He did a really good job for a long time. They decided to go in a different direction. He goes to Vegas. He wins the Cup. Now, after a couple of years there, they moved on from him. It doesn't mean Bruce Cassidy isn't a good coach. It just means that the situation had changed and you needed a new voice, a new face. That's kind of the way it is with coaches, especially these days.
Well, yeah. I mean, look no further than John Tortorella, been with 6 different teams.
Yeah.
And I mean, eventually his expiration date comes up but he always goes in and gets great results. Look what he's doing right now with Vegas. 7, Vegas, he hasn't lost. And he did the same thing in other places. And yet he will get fired. Doesn't mean he's a bad coach, because obviously he keeps getting hired. Yeah. Bruce Cassidy will get rehired. Craig Berube will get rehired if he's out there. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you have to take an assistant coach's job for a year until something opens up. I mean, Pete DeBoer got hired just a couple of weeks ago. So it doesn't mean you're a bad coach. What it means is we weren't at the right place at the right time right now for you to carry on being the guy steering the ship.
Neil, another guy I'll ask you about and he's a terrific young player, is Matthew Knies. And for me, in a perfect world, you don't want to trade Matthew Knies, but clearly they don't live in a perfect world. They have no assets really that I could think of to trade outside of some of the players we just mentioned. Knies, at his age and with what kind of player he is someone that could bring back maybe a couple of young defensemen. Because when I look at this team, Neil, their defense, I mean, I know Tanev said today he's feeling better and he's looking forward to coming back next year. But if you're relying on Tanev, as good a player as he is, with his injury history, I think you got big problems. So for me, they've got to get younger on defense. Would you consider trading Knies in the right trade?
Yeah, if it was the right trade, but I really like him. I actually said before the season started that he'd be a breakout player this season, and he was. And he's a power forward, and he's a guy, but nobody's untouchable in a 32-team league. I mean, because you've got to do what you've got to do to be more competitive, and I do like Knies a lot, but you've always got to listen about everybody. I think, EG. I think, No matter who you're talking about, you've got to listen. If somebody says they're interested, listen and hear what they have to say, see if it makes sense for you. If they're trying to give you, not very much for your player, then you just say no. But you've got to keep listening.
Neil, I think it was on Wednesday, a big story dropped in The Athletic. That was a long story about the season the Leafs had and a lot of stuff behind the scenes about how things were going with management, upper management. I haven't heard a lot of denials about anything yet, so I'm going to assume a lot of the stuff in that story, if not all of it, was true. But the one thing that I want to ask you about is the Leafs, it seems like there is a desire within the group to save money all of a sudden. Now, Brendan Shanahan came in there. I think Shanahan, he kind of turned that franchise around. And I'm always a big believer in these teams. And you were the manager of the New York Rangers. Brendan goes in with the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's a wealth there. And in the salary cap era, which, is different than when you were running the Rangers, you can't spend only so much. You can only spend so much on the players. But where you can spend is with the scouts, with the other management group, other areas. You can get the best of the best. And the way you treat the players, little things. I mean, in that story, it talked about the discount for merchandise going from 50% for the players down to 30%. It just seemed like a lot of little cutting corner stuff. To me, that's worrisome if I'm thinking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, because if the word starts to be that the Leafs are a cost-cutting organization, one of the biggest franchises in the world of sports, I don't know if that's good news in terms of bringing in top-notch people, top-notch players, management people, and building out your group.
But it's typical corporate nonsense, isn't it? Like it's just so typical of, let's save our pennies and blow off the dollars. I hear that they're going to say that you can, for X number of dollars, your kid can go out and be the flag bearer at the game on the ice. And for X number of dollars, you can have a dinner in the Leafs locker room. Like, are you kidding me? The sanctity of the locker room, you're going to let people come in and eat dinner in there? Like, then they're doing all kinds of these things.
Don't step on the logo.
Yeah, don't step
on the logo.
Don't drop any spaghetti on the logo. I mean, it's craziness. And then and especially with the Leafs, because you're subconsciously, your thought about the Leafs, as with the Rangers, is these guys make money hand over fist. Like, these guys this is an unbelievable. Now you hear they want to, take another 89 cents for something, or they want to do this, it just blows your mind. It's like death by 1,000 cuts or something. Like, come on, guys, you got to be classy. You're the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're not for goodness sake. If we heard this come out of Ottawa, you'd understand it. It's a small market. Yeah. They need to get other revenue sources. Toronto, they need other revenue sources.
Yeah, it's not a good look for sure. I'll finish off with one question, which is kind of a bigger picture question. And I want your opinion on it because, again, you've lived through these different eras and you've seen how things have changed with the cap. The cap came in when we got it back at, 20 years ago now. I think the high watermark that year was $39 million, which is, it's blown through that 3 times. I mean, we're up to we're going to get into like $110, $115 million high end of the salary cap going forward in the next year or two. But that also drags the floor up.
Yeah.
And now teams, to be bad or rebuild, however you want to put it, they got to spend $94 million. I mean, is this a sustainable thing for you, knowing these different franchises, knowing that you said there's some smaller markets? You used to be, I can remember when in the early 2000s before the cap, when the Penguins were in that dire straits, their payroll was like $8 million to be bad for the whole team.
Yep.
Now you got to spend $93 million to be bad. Is that a sustainable thing? Is that a worry for you as you move forward?
Well, they do have revenue sharing, which the league would tell you that hopefully makes up for some of the deficit there that you have to spend.
Yeah.
To me, it is worrisome. I don't know how they do it. I mean, for example, let's just pick Ottawa, who had a fantastic season, and I really love their team and the way they're running the operation. So nothing about that. Let's just talk about the city the province, the country. Yeah. You're bringing in Canadian dollars, which I think right now is at least a 30% discount from an American dollar.
Yeah.
You're paying, everybody makes American dollars in the NHL. You know all this. But the other thing is that you have to pay a Brady Tkachuk or whoever you want to talk about, Shabbat, Sanderson, whoever. You have to pay them commensurate with whether they're in Ottawa or they're in New York or wherever they are. And yet you've got a small market that can only bring in the Canadian dollars, and you've got only so many revenue sources. So how does that keep going at that number? That's what worries me. And I don't have all the facts in front of me, but that is worrisome that you have these discrepancies.
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting. Would you like to see, I got a couple of quickies, would you like to see a play-in round, let's say, or maybe additions to the postseason in the NHL? We see it in other sports. It is a revenue driver. Would you like to see it?
What I'd like to see was more teams get a chance in the playoffs. What I really think is 16 out of 32 means 50% of the league is happy and 50% is pissed off. The fans, that is.
Yeah.
And so I think you got to do better than that. It was always 2/3. I mean, nobody was screaming in the original 6 that 4 out of 6, that's a joke. Why do we let 4 out of 6 make it? But yet it stayed at 2/3 all the way through. And in the 21-team league, 14, I believe, got in. 7
didn't. And then it was 16 out of 21.
16 out of 21. Now, 16 out of 21, and then you add 11 more teams, and it's still 16.
Yeah.
I mean, that's hard.
Yeah.
And you've got the lottery, which makes it even harder because, you know, if you're the worst team in the league like Vancouver Canucks this year, don't you deserve the best player? I mean, I know there's the tanking thing and all that, but like, boy, oh boy, this lottery thing, if the wrong team wins the lottery, they get a franchise player, and the poor guy that's just struggling doesn't. That's a tough way. I think Detroit has suffered through that for their 9-year drought.
Yeah.
But I'm way off.
Detroit and Colorado, and Detroit and Columbus are teams in particular, and I'm sure there's a few others that, you know, have had no lottery success, and it hurts them. I mean, when you're not drafting first or second, you know, Neil.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a chance to get a good player, but you don't have a chance to get that difference-making franchise.
And I got to tell you, I'm at every Islander game, as you know. I go to all the Islander games. Islanders got dropped in their lap a kid by the name of Matthew Schaefer. He's a household name already.
Yep.
I mean, he's completely re-energized that building, that franchise. He is a generational player if there ever was one. I mean, he goes right with Bedard and Celebrini. And if you haven't seen this kid play, you should make sure you do, because for a defenseman, he's off the charts. Now, was that some genius move by New York Islanders? Nothing. They had nothing to do with it. They had a ping pong ball in the machine, and it came up with their name on it. Yeah, they won the lottery. And no more than if you or I won the lottery in the outside. You know, were we a genius? No, we stopped at a gas station and bought a ticket. So it makes a big difference when you get those star players. Me too. It makes a big difference when you get those star players. And sometimes they fall in your lap, but you get credit for it. I know that in New York with the Islanders, Matthew Darch was getting all kinds of credit, and he should. Made the Dobson trade, got a couple of picks. Then Matthew Schaefer didn't even drop in his lap. What happened was they got that first pick. Then they hired Darch later. And they said to Darch, "Oh, guess what? Sit down. We're going to drop this in your lap." and they got Matthew Schaefer.
All right, finally, the last thing. I guarantee you. You got a cup winner for me this year?
Yeah, Colorado Avalanche.
All right, there you go. That's pretty simple.
I wanted to go as fast as I could.
They've been the best team all year.
Yeah.
All right, the best team this year, so we'll see if they can get it done in the postseason. Neil, always my pleasure to catch up with you. We've known each other for a long time, so have a great rest of the day. Hopefully I'll see you in person soon, and thanks for the time today.
No, thanks for having me on. Anytime at all, EJ. It's always great to talk.
All right, Neil Smith, Stanley Cup winning general manager of the New York Rangers back in 1994, taking the time with us today right here on the Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network. Remember, subscribe, like, got great stuff for you here on the Bet Rivers Network. Take care.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.